Belle Gibson's story begins in Melbourne, Australia, where she carefully curated an image that would captivate hundreds of thousands of people desperate for hope. In 2013, her Instagram feed looked like a digital sanctuary. Pastel-colored smoothie bowls, green juices, yoga poses under soft sunlight. Everything about her online persona radiated health, peace, and resilience. She presented herself not just as a wellness blogger, but as a survivor. Gibson told her growing audience that she had been diagnosed with malignant brain cancer at the age of 20. According to her, she had been given only 4 months to live. Yet instead of following traditional medical treatment, she claimed she had cured herself through diet, detoxing, and holistic therapies. The story was irresistible. Young, beautiful, vibrant, and, as she claimed, living proof that food was medicine. Her followers, many of whom were cancer patients themselves or loved ones of the ill, began looking to her as a beacon. Each post she made was not just lifestyle advice, but what appeared to be life-saving wisdom. Her popularity exploded. She launched an app, The Whole Pantry, which offered recipes, wellness tips, and holistic guidance. Apple featured her app prominently, pre-installing it on demo iPhones in stores. Penguin Books signed her for a cookbook deal, promoting her as the poster child of alternative healing. Her Instagram follower count soared past 200,000, but what her audience didn't know was that none of it was real. Gibson did not have brain cancer. She had never been diagnosed. The dramatic story she built her empire upon was a complete fabrication. The cracks in her story began appearing slowly. Journalists started asking questions. Medical experts noticed inconsistencies in her claims. In interviews, her accounts of treatments shifted. Sometimes she said she had surgery. Other times she suggested she refused it entirely. Eventually, the Australian Women's Weekly published a bombshell investigation in 2015. In a now infamous interview, Gibson was asked directly to provide medical proof of her cancer. She couldn't. When pressed, she admitted, "None of it's true." The admission was devastating. For years, cancer patients had looked to her as proof that alternative treatments could save them. Some even turned away from chemotherapy and evidence-based medicine, inspired by Gibson's fabricated survival. Health professionals were outraged. Families who had lost loved ones began asking whether Gibson's influence had led those patients down dangerous false paths. Authorities quickly turned their attention to her finances. Gibson had claimed she was donating large portions of her profits, from her app sales, her cookbook, and sponsored content, to charity. She said money was going to children's hospitals, cancer foundations, and other organizations. Investigators found that almost none of those donations had ever been made. In total, over $300,000 in promised funds had simply disappeared. The case against her was clear: deception for financial gain. In 2017, the Federal Court of Australia found Gibson guilty of misleading and deceptive conduct. She was ordered to pay a fine of $410,000. The judgment was scathing, describing her as someone who engaged in conduct of the most serious kind. Yet even after the ruling, Gibson remained defiant. She gave bizarre interviews in which she claimed she had been misled herself, or that she was a victim of her own confusion. She never fully apologized. She never accepted responsibility. And to this day, she has not paid the majority of her fine. For her followers, the betrayal was deeply personal. People who had sent her messages of gratitude for giving them hope were left feeling exploited. Others admitted they had delayed or abandoned real treatments because of her story, decisions they now regretted. Her app vanished from app stores, her book was pulled from shelves, and her Instagram account, once a glossy haven of health, became a monument to deceit. The public reaction was fierce. Gibson's story became a cultural turning point in Australia, sparking conversations about the dangers of unverified medical advice online. Health authorities warned the public about the risks of trusting influencers with life-and-death claims. Social media platforms were forced to confront their role in amplifying dangerous misinformation. Today, Belle Gibson remains a pariah. Occasionally, her name resurfaces in the press when debt collectors attempt to chase her unpaid fines. She lives in obscurity compared to her past fame, but her case remains a cautionary tale. It stands as one of the earliest and most infamous examples of how influencer culture can be weaponized, where a person with charisma and a camera can convince thousands of people to believe a lie, even when the stakes are fatal. The haunting reflection left behind is simple but profound. How many lives were shortened? How many families shattered? because someone trusted Mel Gibson more than they trusted their doctors. And in the algorithm-driven world of social media, where attention is rewarded above truth, how many more Mel Gibsons are waiting to rise? Mike Sorrentino, better known to the world as The Situation, was a household name in the early 2010s. His rise to fame came with MTV's Jersey Shore, a reality show that captured the chaotic lives of 8 young adults living together in Seaside Heights, New Jersey. Known for his washboard abs, tanned skin, and endless catchphrases, Sorrentino quickly became one of the most recognizable reality TV stars of the era. On screen, he was the life of the party, loud, brash, and always in the middle of the drama. Off-screen, he transformed his notoriety into a lucrative business. Sorrentino reportedly earned up to $150,000 per episode at the peak of Jersey Shore. He also raked in millions from club appearances, endorsements, fitness DVDs, tanning products, and even a clothing line. By 2010, he was pulling in more than $5 million a year. But with fame and money came excess. Luxury cars, designer clothes, and a lifestyle of constant indulgence became his norm. In interviews, he bragged about his wealth. On Instagram, he posted flashy photos of Ferraris, mansions, and parties. To his millions of followers, it looked like the American dream. A man who had gone from obscurity to superstardom in a matter of months. What fans didn't know was that behind the curated image was a dangerous game with the IRS. In 2014, federal prosecutors announced that Mike Sorrentino and his brother, Mark, had been indicted on charges of tax evasion. The accusations were damning. Between 2010 and 2012, the brothers had allegedly failed to pay taxes on nearly $9 million of income. They were accused of filing false returns, underreporting revenue, and writing off personal expenses, like luxury cars and designer clothing, as business costs. The indictment shocked fans. Sorrentino, who had built his brand on flaunting wealth, now faced the possibility of prison for mishandling it. He and his brother appeared in court, both denying the charges. Yet the evidence mounted. Federal investigators revealed bank records, forged receipts, and deliberate attempts to conceal income. The case dragged on for years, with Sorrentino continuing to appear in public and even on television while awaiting his fate. During this period, his personal life spiraled. He entered rehab multiple times for painkiller addiction. Paparazzi photos showed him looking disheveled, a far cry from the chiseled star of Jersey Shore. Tabloids speculated that the pressure of his legal troubles was wearing him down. Still, he clung to his persona, continuing to post motivational messages and glimpses of luxury to his fans online. In 2018, the case reached its conclusion. Sorrentino pled guilty to tax evasion, admitting that he had concealed income in order to avoid paying what he owed. His brother Mark pled guilty to a related charge of aiding in the preparation of a false tax return. The sentencing hearing was televised across news outlets, with former co-stars from Jersey Shore showing up in support. Nicole Snooki Polizzi, Jenny J-Wow Farley, and Paul Paulie D. Del Vecchio all attended, hoping their presence would sway the judge. But fame could not shield him. In January 2019, Mike Sorrentino was sentenced to 8 months in federal prison, 2 years of supervised release, and 500 hours of community service. His brother Mark received a 2-year sentence. The contrast was jarring. Just a few years earlier, millions had watched Sorrentino living recklessly in beach houses and nightclubs. Now, cameras filmed him arriving at a federal correctional facility in New Jersey, hugging his wife Lauren goodbye before walking through the gates. Inside prison, Sorrentino reportedly kept to himself, reading, exercising, and focusing on his recovery. He later said the experience was humbling, and that it gave him a chance to reflect on his past choices. Upon his release in September 2019, he returned to a loyal fan base and immediately rejoined the cast of Jersey Shore, Family Vacation. His fellow castmates embraced him, and he began branding himself as a changed man. But the stain of his conviction remained. His image as the Situation, once defined by partying and excess, was now tied to tax fraud and public downfall. The press often framed his comeback through the lens of redemption, but the memory of his sentencing hung over every interview. The public response was mixed. Some fans admired his ability to bounce back and praised his honesty about addiction and mistakes. Others saw his prison time as proof that he had always been a fraud, hiding behind a persona of arrogance while breaking the law. In reflecting on Sorrentino's story, The chilling lesson emerges. Fame magnifies everything, including mistakes. In a digital age where reality stars can become millionaires overnight, the temptation to cheat the system is strong. But as Sorrentino discovered, the IRS watches as closely as the fans do. Today, he remains active on television and social media, but his story serves as a reminder that not all influencer scandals involve glamour or shocking betrayals. Sometimes the crime is as unglamorous as failing to pay taxes, yet the consequences, public humiliation, prison, and the collapse of a carefully constructed image, can be just as devastating. The haunting question that lingers is this: in the chase for fame and wealth, how many influencers are cutting corners, believing they are untouchable until the law comes knocking? For Mike Sorrentino, the answer came in the form of prison bars. Anna Sorokin, better known by the name she invented for herself, Anna Delvey, is one of the most infamous influencers of the last decade, though her influence was built on deception rather than talent. She presented herself as a German heiress, floating through New York City's elite social circles with an air of effortless wealth. Her Instagram page was carefully curated. Photos from luxury hotels, dinners with movers and shakers, vacations in exotic places. She looked like someone who belonged among the wealthy and powerful. But Anna wasn't rich. She wasn't an heiress. She was a con artist, one who understood that in the influencer age, perception is more powerful than reality. Born in Russia in 1991, Sorokin moved to Germany with her family as a child. After high school, she studied fashion in London before relocating to Paris, where she interned at Purple, a French fashion magazine. It was here that she began calling herself Anna Delvey. By the mid-2010s, she arrived in New York, and with her European accent, carefully styled wardrobe, and expensive tastes, she quickly convinced others that she was part of the city's wealthy elite. Her story was simple but effective. She claimed her father was a wealthy businessman who would soon transfer her a trust fund worth millions. While waiting for that money to arrive, she lived on credit and on the generosity of others. She stayed at boutique hotels for weeks at a time, charging thousands to rooms she never paid for. She promised investors she was building an exclusive arts foundation, even meeting with bankers to secure loans. At restaurants, she ordered lavish dinners and then casually suggested a friend cover the bill, promising to reimburse them later. What made Anna's scam so effective was her mastery of image. She posted constantly on Instagram, photos of private jets, champagne bottles, designer clothes, and hotel lobbies. Each post reinforced the illusion that she lived a life of wealth. And in a city like New York, where appearance often precedes truth, people believed her. But lies unravel, especially when money is involved. By 2017, hotel staff began noticing that Anna never had working credit cards. Friends she had borrowed thousands from began demanding repayment. Journalists started investigating her mysterious background. The turning point came when she attempted to secure a $22 million loan to launch the Anna Delvey Foundation, a luxury arts club in Manhattan. She submitted forged financial documents, including false bank statements claiming she had tens of millions overseas. When the banks pressed her for proof, the scheme collapsed. In 2018, Sorokin was arrested. The charges were staggering: multiple counts of grand larceny, attempted grand larceny, and theft of services. Her victims included hotels, restaurants, friends, and financial institutions. Prosecutors argued that she had stolen more than $200,000, though the attempted fraud with the foundation would have reached into the tens of millions had it succeeded. Her trial in New York became a spectacle. Reporters filled the courtroom, live tweeting details. Anna leaned into the attention, hiring a stylist to select her courtroom outfits. Each day she appeared in designer clothes, as if determined to maintain her image as a socialite, even as she faced years behind bars. It was influencer culture colliding with the justice system. In 2019, Sorokin was convicted on 8 charges, including second-degree grand larceny, theft of services, and first-degree attempted grand larceny. She was sentenced to 4 to 12 years in prison, fined $24,000, and ordered to pay restitution of $199,000. The public reaction was complex. Some condemned her as a dangerous fraud who manipulated people for personal gain. Others admired her audacity, seeing her as a symbol of ambition in a world obsessed with wealth and status. Netflix announced a drama series based on her life before she was even released from prison, further blurring the lines between crime and celebrity. Sorokin served nearly 4 years before being released in 2021 for good behavior, but her freedom was short-lived. Immigration authorities quickly detained her for overstaying her visa, holding her in ICE custody. Even from detention, Anna continued to post on Instagram, keeping her audience engaged. Her story lingers because it reflects something deeper about social media and influence. Anna Sorokin proved that in a world driven by appearances, if you look the part, people will believe you belong. Her Instagram was not just a highlight reel of her life, it was the foundation of her con. The haunting reflection is this: how many people followed Anna Delvey not because they knew her, but because they wanted to be her? How many were willing to believe her stories because her feed looked convincing? In the influencer era, deception is just a filter away, and Anna Delvey mastered it until the law finally caught up with her. Jake Paul's name has become synonymous with YouTube excess, the parties, the pranks, the chaos, and the controversy. To his young fans, he was the ultimate rebel, the influencer who didn't play by the rules. But over the years, his antics moved from internet spectacles to encounters with the law, leading many to wonder if his quest for fame and virality would ultimately land him in prison. Born in 1997 in Cleveland, Ohio, Jake Paul began his internet career on Vine, the now-defunct short-form video app, alongside his brother, Logan Paul. Their 6-second clips of pranks and comedy sketches quickly went viral, earning them millions of followers. When Vine shut down, Jake transitioned to YouTube, where he launched a new brand, Team 10, a content house filled with young influencers, all living together in a Los Angeles mansion and churning out videos designed to go viral. Jake's formula was simple but effective. Loud stunts, dangerous pranks, and outrageous behavior attracted millions of subscribers. His catchphrases and over-the-top personality turned him into one of YouTube's biggest stars, with millions of young fans buying his merchandise and mimicking his antics. But while his fan base grew, so did the complaints. Neighbors in his upscale Beverly Grove community in Los Angeles accused him of turning the neighborhood into a war zone. Fire stunts, dirt bikes, constant noise, and swarms of screaming teenagers became a daily occurrence. The Los Angeles Times ran a story in 2017 describing the neighborhood as under siege. That same year, Jake was fired from his role on the Disney Channel show Bizaardvark because of the growing backlash to his behavior. Instead of slowing down, he doubled down, posting even more outrageous content. His mansion became a brand symbol, a playground of chaos and wealth where anything could happen. But with fame came scrutiny, from neighbors, from the press, and eventually from law enforcement. In May 2020, as protests erupted across the United States following the murder of George Floyd, Jake Paul appeared in Scottsdale, Arizona. Videos surfaced showing him inside a looted mall, filming as stores were vandalized and chaos unfolded. Though Paul claimed he was only there to document the events and denied participating in any looting, public outrage was swift. A week later, he was charged with criminal trespass and unlawful assembly. The incident marked a turning point. Critics argued that Paul had exploited a moment of national crisis for clout, inserting himself into a dangerous situation for views. The charges were eventually dismissed, but the damage to his reputation was lasting. Soon after, in August 2020, federal agents executed a search warrant on Paul's Calabasas mansion in connection with the Scottsdale case. Armored vehicles rolled up to his property and law enforcement seized multiple firearms. The raid was broadcast on national news, shocking viewers who were used to seeing Paul's mansion only in the context of his videos. Though no federal charges were filed from the raid, Paul's legal troubles were far from over. Lawsuits began piling up. Former collaborators accused him of fraudulent business practices. Parents filed complaints about unsafe events he hosted, including a now infamous influencer boxing event that spiraled out of control. At least one investor sued him for misleading them into funding failed projects. Even as the controversies mounted, Paul reinvented himself yet again, this time as a professional boxer. He entered the ring in high-profile exhibition matches against other influencers and athletes, drawing massive pay-per-view audiences. His trash talk and aggressive self-promotion made him both a villain and a star in the boxing world. But with the new career came new allegations. Critics accused him of failing to pay fighters and staff, mismanaging contracts, and using boxing as another platform for spectacle rather than sport. For Jake Paul, the line between influencer antics and criminal behavior blurred repeatedly. He avoided prison, but others in his orbit weren't as lucky. Some of his collaborators and business partners faced legal consequences for scams and reckless stunts, while Paul himself seemed to slip away from direct accountability each time. The narrative of untouchability followed him. No matter how many times the police showed up, no matter how many lawsuits were filed, Jake continued to thrive online. Still, the question lingered. How long could it last? Fame had insulated him, but it had also made him a target. His name was constantly in the press, his every move scrutinized by authorities and critics. Unlike smaller influencers who could operate in the shadows, Jake lived under a microscope, and each misstep brought him closer to the possibility of real consequences. The reflection of Jake Paul's story is darker than it appears on the surface. His rise illustrates the danger of rewarding chaos with attention. Each outrageous stunt, each brush with the law only seemed to make him more famous. To his fans, he was untouchable, the bad boy who always came out on top. But behind the viral clips and million-dollar paydays was a pattern of reckless disregard for rules, communities, and basic accountability. Today, Jake Paul continues to box, promote fights, and post online, but his legal troubles remain a shadow over his career. For critics, he is the embodiment of influencer excess, proof that social media stardom can foster entitlement and lawlessness. For supporters, he is a symbol of hustle and reinvention, someone who turned controversy into currency. The haunting takeaway is this: Jake Paul may have avoided prison so far, but his story shows how thin the line is between influencer spectacle and criminal consequence. In the world of internet fame, where the chase for clicks and clout never ends, one more reckless decision could be the one that changes everything. In the early 2010s, Elliot Rodger was just another name lost among millions of YouTube creators. His channel, filled with vlogs about his daily life, didn't stand out for talent or creativity. But beneath the surface of seemingly harmless videos was something darker, a growing obsession with rejection, loneliness, and violent fantasies. His spiral from a quiet, awkward young man into a mass murderer revealed one of the most chilling cases of social media blending with real-world violence. Elliot Rodger was born in 1991 in London to a British filmmaker and a Malaysian mother. His family moved to California when he was young, settling in the affluent community of Santa Barbara. On paper, his life looked privileged: private schools, vacations, connections to Hollywood. But behind the veneer of wealth, Rodger struggled with intense social isolation. He described himself as shy, anxious, and chronically unable to connect with peers. By his late teens, Rodger was consumed with bitterness toward women. He saw himself as unattractive and unworthy of love, but instead of seeking help, he turned his frustrations into hatred. He became fixated on the idea that women were deliberately ignoring him while rewarding other men. This resentment crystallized into a warped ideology. He was entitled to affection, and the world had wronged him by denying it. In 2011, Rodger began uploading YouTube videos under his own name. At first, they seemed like typical vlogs, clips of him driving, walking, or discussing his loneliness. But as the months passed, his videos became more disturbing. He would stare into the camera with a cold, detached expression and speak of his misery. He ranted about women who chose to give their love to obnoxious men while rejecting him, whom he described as a true gentleman. Friends, classmates, and even strangers online who stumbled upon his videos noticed the unsettling tone. His words weren't just sad. They carried an undercurrent of hostility. In one video, he described how he wanted to punish women for rejecting him, and how society would pay for what he endured. Yet despite the obvious red flags, his content went largely unnoticed outside of small online forums. Rodger was also active on internet communities that fed his anger. He frequented incel forums, groups of self-identified involuntary celibates who shared misogynistic beliefs and grievances. There he found validation for his hatred. The forums didn't discourage his rhetoric. They encouraged it. Slowly, his alienation evolved into a violent mission. In 2014, Rodger began writing a manifesto he titled My Twisted World. The document, over 100,000 words long, detailed his life story, his grievances, and his plan to take revenge. It was part autobiography, part hate speech, and part blueprint for murder. He mailed the document to family members and acquaintances shortly before putting his plan into action. On May 23, 2014, Elliot Rodger carried out a massacre in Isla Vista, near the University of California, Santa Barbara, armed with knives and firearms. He first murdered his 2 roommates and a visitor in his apartment. He then drove to a sorority house where he shot 3 women outside, killing 2. Afterward, he continued his rampage through the town, shooting pedestrians and cyclists at random. By the end of the night, 6 people were dead, 14 were wounded, and Roger himself was dead from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The massacre shocked the nation. Almost immediately, attention turned to his online presence. His YouTube videos, still available at the time, became evidence of his descent into violent extremism. Clips of him calmly describing his hatred, his loneliness, and his desire for revenge circulated widely. One of his final uploads, titled Elliot Rodger's Retribution, laid out his plan in chilling detail. He described how he would kill women for rejecting him and punish men for living the life he believed was denied to him. Investigators pieced together the timeline. Years of isolation, immersion in online hate communities, disturbing videos, and ignored warning signs. Prior to the massacre, police had even conducted a welfare check after his parents expressed concern about his behavior. When officers visited him, Roger was polite and calm, convincing them nothing was wrong. Had they searched his apartment, they might have discovered the weapons and writings that detailed his intentions. The legal aftermath was unique because the perpetrator was dead. There was no trial, no chance for cross-examination. Instead, the court of public opinion focused on questions of prevention. Could this have been stopped? Should law enforcement have done more when alerted to his videos and writings? What responsibility did YouTube and online forums have for hosting his dangerous rhetoric? The massacre also sparked a national conversation about misogyny and radicalization online. Feminist groups pointed to Rodger's manifesto and videos as proof of the dangers of unchecked hatred toward women. His words became a chilling symbol of incel ideology, a subculture that would later inspire other violent attacks across the globe. Communities in Isla Vista gathered to mourn the victims. Vigils were held, candles lit, and names read aloud. Yet the shadow of Rodger's actions lingered. His digital footprint, the videos, the manifesto, the online posts, ensured his ideology lived on in the darkest corners of the internet. To this day, some incel communities disturbingly idolize him, referring to him as Saint Elliot. But for the victims' families and survivors, there was nothing saintly about him. They remembered lives cut short, futures stolen, and the trauma left behind. Their stories, not Rodger's manifesto, became the focus of healing efforts. Parents of victims advocated for stronger gun control laws and better mental health interventions. The University of California system implemented programs aimed at identifying and supporting isolated students before they spiraled into violence. The reflection of Elliot Rodger's story is deeply unsettling. His crimes reveal how personal grievances, when combined with online radicalization, can erupt into real-world horror. His YouTube channel, once ignored, became a warning sign in retrospect. Proof that digital cries for help or declarations of hate can foreshadow unimaginable violence. The haunting takeaway is this: Elliot Rodger showed the world how dangerous it can be when online isolation turns into offline violence. His story forces us to ask, how many others are out there, broadcasting their pain and anger into the digital void, waiting for someone to notice before it's too late? Which of these cases shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. Danielle Cohn's name has been synonymous with controversy since she first appeared on the social media scene. She rose to prominence as a young teenager on the app Musical. Lie, the platform that later became TikTok, where she lip-synced to pop songs, posed in fashionable outfits, and cultivated an image that suggested she was older than her real age. Millions of viewers, many of them her peers, flocked to her content. But behind the glamorous facade of influencer stardom was a troubling reality. Danielle was much younger than she claimed to be, and the lies surrounding her age would eventually lead to legal trouble, family disputes, and a cautionary tale about the dangers of fame for children in the digital age. Danielle was born in 2004 in Florida. By the time she was just 11 years old, she was already chasing internet stardom. She entered beauty pageants, modeled, and leaned on social media to expand her following. When Musical exploded in popularity around 2015, Danielle quickly carved out her niche. With heavy makeup, revealing clothing, and suggestive poses, she cultivated the persona of a much older teen. Her rapid rise was fueled by a carefully crafted illusion. Fans believed she was 15 or 16, old enough to fit into the glamorous influencer mold. The truth, that she was barely a preteen, was hidden from the public. And that deception wasn't accidental. It was later revealed that her mother, Jennifer, managed her accounts and actively encouraged the false image, hoping to capitalize on the lucrative influencer economy. By 2017, Danielle had millions of followers across platforms. Brands began paying her for promotions and she signed sponsorship deals. But whispers about her true age began circulating. Observant fans and parents expressed concern. Was this child being pushed into adult situations for the sake of money and fame? The situation spiraled further when Danielle began posting videos with older boys, including boyfriends who were several years her senior. In 2019, she announced on YouTube that she and her then-boyfriend, 16-year-old Mikey Tua, had gotten married in Las Vegas. The video, which featured them in wedding attire at a chapel, shocked viewers. Not only was Danielle still a minor, but she was also under the legal age of consent. And if her real age was younger than what she claimed, the situation was even more troubling. That same year, Danielle posted another bombshell video claiming she was pregnant. With dramatic music and emotional narration, she told viewers she and Mikey were expecting a child. The internet exploded with backlash, with many condemning the video as exploitative and irresponsible. Days later, Danielle admitted it was a prank, a manufactured storyline for views. But the damage was already done. Critics accused her and her management team, which largely consisted of her mother, of exploiting shocking adult themes to gain attention, regardless of the psychological toll on Danielle herself. Amid the mounting controversies, Danielle's father, Dustin Cohn, stepped into the public eye. In a lengthy Facebook post, he revealed that Danielle was not 15 or 16 as she claimed. She was only 13 at the time. He accused Danielle's mother of lying about her age to exploit her daughter for fame and money. The revelation confirmed what many had long suspected. Danielle had been pushed into an adult persona long before she was ready. The legal implications quickly became clear. Questions arose about contracts Danielle had signed, since minors cannot legally enter into binding agreements without parental consent. Brands faced scrutiny for partnering with a child under false pretenses. There were also concerns about child labor laws, as Danielle's career was built on hours of content creation and promotional work that went largely unregulated. But perhaps most troubling was the risk of exploitation. By presenting herself as older, Danielle was exposed to predatory adults online. Critics argued that her mother's management blurred the lines between empowerment and endangerment, pushing her daughter into situations that could have lasting consequences. Child advocacy groups began calling for stricter regulations on underage influencers, pointing to Danielle's case as a glaring example of what can go wrong when fame becomes the family business. As the truth about her age spread, Danielle's brand suffered. While she retained a loyal fan base, her reputation was tarnished. Many parents and watchdog groups viewed her as a victim of exploitation, while others saw her as complicit in the deception. Lawsuits and custody battles followed, with her father fighting for greater control over her upbringing. Meanwhile, Danielle continued to post online, seemingly unfazed by the storm around her. She released music, promoted products, and leaned into the controversies that made her a household name in the influencer world. But the cracks in her personal life grew deeper. Reports surfaced of financial mismanagement, strained family relationships, and mounting legal concerns over her contracts and earnings. By her mid-teens, Danielle had become one of the most polarizing figures in internet culture. Her story wasn't about a single crime in the traditional sense, robbery, murder, fraud, but rather a crime of exploitation and manipulation carried out in plain sight. The adults around her blurred legal and ethical boundaries, pushing a child into situations that could have lifelong repercussions. The reflection of Danielle Cohn's story is haunting because it reveals a darker side of influencer culture, the commodification of children. In the rush to monetize clicks and views, her childhood was traded for brand deals and internet fame. And while her mother and management may have orchestrated much of it, Danielle herself became a willing participant, caught in a system where attention equaled survival. Her case forced the public to confront uncomfortable questions. Should children be allowed to become influencers without strict oversight? Where is the line between parental guidance and exploitation? And how many other young stars are out there, hiding their true age, pressured to act older than they are, while the adults in their lives look the other way. Today, Danielle continues to post content, though with more awareness of her age and the scrutiny around her. But her name remains tied to the controversies that defined her early career. For many, she stands as a cautionary tale, a reminder that behind the polished images on social media, there can be exploitation, lies, and harm that unfold long before the cameras turn off. The haunting takeaway is this: Danielle Cohn's story isn't just about one child influencer. It's about an entire system that thrives on blurring reality, rewarding controversy, and sacrificing innocence for virality. And once the truth comes out, there's no undoing the damage. In the early days of YouTube prank culture, one name stood above the rest: Vitaly Zdorovetsky. Known to millions simply as Vitaly's TV, he built a digital empire on outrageous stunts, risky pranks, and an appetite for shock value. To his fans, he was fearless, the guy who would do anything for views. But behind the viral fame was a pattern of escalating behavior, run-ins with the law, and a string of arrests that would ultimately overshadow his career. His story illustrates how internet notoriety can fuel recklessness until the line between entertainment and crime disappears. Vitaly was born in 1992 in Murmansk, Russia, before his family emigrated to the United States. Growing up in Florida, he struggled financially but saw opportunity in the new digital frontier of YouTube. In 2011, he uploaded a prank video that went viral almost overnight: Miami Zombie Attack Prank. In it, Vitaly dressed like a zombie and chased terrified pedestrians through the streets. The video racked up millions of views and cemented his reputation as one of YouTube's boldest pranksters. His formula was simple: push the boundaries of public decency and safety to the breaking point. From fake bomb threats to staged robberies, his pranks often left unsuspecting strangers genuinely terrified. Fans loved the chaos, rewarding him with millions of subscribers. But critics saw something more sinister: stunts that endangered the public and blurred the line between comedy and criminality. Vitaly's rise coincided with a boom in prank content across YouTube. Channels competed to outdo each other with increasingly outrageous ideas. But while others stayed within comedic territory, Vitaly seemed drawn to the extreme. His videos often featured scantily clad women, crude humor, and situations that teetered on the edge of legality. This willingness to go further than anyone else made him a star, but also made him a target for law enforcement. His first major legal issue came in 2012, when he attempted to stage a bomb scare prank in public. Police intervened before the prank could unfold fully, and Vitaly was arrested. Though the charges were later reduced, it set a precedent. His antics weren't just entertainment, they were potential crimes. In 2014, Vitaly made global headlines when he stormed the field during the FIFA World Cup final in Brazil. Shirtless, with "natural-born prankster" scrawled across his chest, he ran across the pitch in front of millions of viewers worldwide. Security tackled him quickly, and he spent time in a Brazilian jail before being released. To his fans, it was the ultimate stunt, the embodiment of living without fear. To others, it was reckless exhibitionism, a disruption that risked serious legal consequences. But the FIFA stunt was just the beginning. In the years that followed, Vitaly racked up multiple arrests. He trespassed on private property, disrupted major sporting events, and repeatedly crossed lines that turned pranks into police matters. His run-ins with the law became part of his brand. Every mugshot, every headline only fueled his bad boy reputation. By the mid-2010s, Vitaly had expanded beyond YouTube into mainstream media. He launched a film, Natural-Born Pranksters, in 2016, featuring fellow pranksters Roman Atwood and Dennis Rohde. But unlike his viral videos, the movie was panned by critics who saw it as mean-spirited and uninspired. Audiences, too, seemed tired of the formula. His subscriber growth slowed, and other YouTubers began overtaking him. Rather than reinventing himself, Vitaly leaned further into controversy. He sponsored streakers at major sporting events, paying women to run across fields or crash events wearing his brand name. While it gave him bursts of publicity, it also kept him in constant conflict with authorities. By this time, his pranks were less about creativity and more about shock, a desperate attempt to stay relevant in an evolving YouTube landscape. In 2020, his career took a darker turn. Reports emerged that he had been arrested in Miami for allegedly assaulting a woman while intoxicated. The incident shocked even his most loyal fans. This wasn't a prank gone too far. It was a violent crime accusation that threatened to destroy what remained of his reputation. While details were disputed, the arrest highlighted how far he had drifted from the playful chaos of his early videos into something more troubling. Compounding his troubles was his growing dependence on drugs. In social media posts, Vitaly admitted to abusing substances which fueled his erratic behavior. His once carefully staged pranks became overshadowed by stories of binges, breakdowns, and increasingly unpredictable conduct. For someone who built a career on being wild and fearless, the reality was that his lifestyle was spiraling out of control. Despite the controversies, Vitaly remained defiant. He continued uploading, insisting his career wasn't over. He framed his arrests as badges of honor, proof that he was living without rules. But the numbers told a different story: declining views, dwindling sponsorships, and an audience that had largely moved on to newer creators. His attempts to break into other ventures, from fitness content to adult-themed websites, failed to recapture his former glory. The reflection of Vitaly Zdorovetski's story is a cautionary tale of how the pursuit of internet fame can drive creators to push boundaries until there's nothing left to cross. His early videos thrived on shock value, but as the shock wore off, he escalated into behavior that endangered others and himself. In many ways, his downfall was inevitable, a byproduct of a platform that rewarded attention at any cost. Communities affected by his stunts were left shaken, not amused. Police resources were wasted, events disrupted, and innocent bystanders terrified. What fans saw as entertainment often left real-world scars. The FIFA final, the trespasses, the assault allegations. They were not just headlines. They were consequences of one man's refusal to separate entertainment from recklessness. Today, Vitaly is no longer the YouTube powerhouse he once was. His name evokes nostalgia for a bygone era of prank culture, but also serves as a reminder of its excesses. For every laugh his videos created, there were just as many moments of fear, danger, and harm. The haunting takeaway is clear. In the race to be outrageous, some influencers discover too late that the world has limits. And when those limits are crossed repeatedly, fame doesn't protect you. It accelerates the fall. Austin Jones was once on the cusp of becoming a mainstream music star. With his boyish looks, emo-inspired voice, and heartfelt acoustic covers, he attracted millions of views on YouTube during the early 2010s. He wasn't just another influencer. He was a musician with genuine talent, building a fan base that saw him as approachable, relatable, and safe. For countless young fans, especially teenage girls, Jones wasn't just a performer. He was a friend. But beneath the carefully curated image of the wholesome, sensitive singer lay a predatory secret that would eventually lead to prison. His story remains one of the most chilling examples of how fame can be weaponized against the very people who created it. Austin was born in 1992 in Bloomingdale, Illinois. He discovered music as a child, learning guitar and piano before uploading his first covers to YouTube in 2007. By the early 2010s, his channel exploded in popularity. His acoustic renditions of pop hits and his own original songs resonated with a generation of fans seeking authenticity. Jones knew how to connect. He leaned into a persona of the awkward, kind-hearted musician who cared deeply about his supporters. Concert tours followed. Jones performed at small venues and fan conventions where his audience, overwhelmingly made up of teenage girls, flocked to see him. He spoke openly about his struggles with anxiety and self-doubt, which only endeared him further. In a sea of flashy influencers and pranksters, Jones appeared different, soft-spoken, artistic, and safe. Parents felt comfortable letting their children follow him. Fans trusted him completely. But the image was a facade. By 2015, whispers began circulating that Jones was behaving inappropriately with his fans. Screenshots surfaced showing him asking underage girls to send him twerking videos. At first, he defended himself by claiming the videos were for research, insisting he was helping fans improve their dancing. Many dismissed it as odd but harmless, while others raised alarm bells. In 2017, the truth could no longer be ignored. Federal authorities revealed that Jones had spent years coercing underage fans into sending sexually explicit videos. Using his fame and influence, he pressured girls as young as 14 to record themselves performing sexual acts, convincing them it was a way to show their devotion to him. Investigators found dozens of videos on his devices, along with messages that revealed a pattern of grooming and manipulation. The shock within his fan community was immediate and devastating. Many of his young supporters had looked up to him as a safe space in the chaos of adolescence. To discover that the person they idolized had exploited others their age was not just a betrayal, it was a trauma. Parents, too, felt blindsided. They had allowed their children to attend his concerts, buy his merchandise, and engage with him online, believing he was harmless. Jones was arrested in June 2017 at Chicago's O'Hare International Airport. The FBI charged him with producing child pornography, and the case quickly became national news. The details were horrifying. Prosecutors alleged that Jones had pressured at least 6 girls, repeatedly demanding explicit videos and threatening to cut off contact if they refused. He weaponized his fame to coerce, turning admiration into leverage. In the courtroom, prosecutors painted a stark picture of a predator hiding in plain sight. They argued that Jones used his nice guy persona to mask his intentions, making it easier to target vulnerable fans. The defense tried to emphasize his mental health struggles and lack of criminal history, but the evidence was overwhelming. In 2019, Austin Jones was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison. The public reaction was swift and brutal. His YouTube channel was deleted, his music scrubbed from platforms, and his name became synonymous with betrayal. Fellow creators condemned him, and fans who had once adored him felt ashamed for ever supporting him. For many, the case became a wake-up call. Internet celebrities are not inherently safe, no matter how relatable they seem. The aftermath was painful. Survivors of Jones's manipulation spoke out, describing the emotional toll of realizing they had been exploited. Some admitted they still struggled with guilt, even though they were victims of coercion. Others shared how the experience shattered their trust in not only influencers, but in adults in general. Their voices highlighted the long-lasting damage predators inflict, even when the abuse isn't physical. Jones's sentencing sent shockwaves through the influencer community. It forced conversations about accountability, power dynamics, and the vulnerability of young fans. Platforms like YouTube were criticized for failing to protect minors, and for allowing creators like Jones to cultivate parasocial relationships without oversight. Lawmakers and advocacy groups used the case as evidence that stricter regulations were needed for influencer-fan interactions. For Jones himself, prison marked the end of his career and his carefully constructed image. The man who once sang about heartbreak and vulnerability was revealed to be exploiting the very emotions he claimed to share. His downfall wasn't just a personal collapse. It was a betrayal of an entire community of young people who had believed in him. The reflection of Austin Jones's story is particularly haunting because it exposes the darker side of parasocial relationships. Fans felt they knew him personally, that he cared about them as individuals, but in reality, he was exploiting that trust to satisfy his own desires. The digital intimacy of influencer culture created the perfect cover for manipulation, and the consequences were devastating. The haunting takeaway is this: Austin Jones's rise and fall proves that predators can hide in plain sight, cloaked in fame, relatability, and trust. His story forces us to confront an unsettling truth, that in the world of influencers, the most dangerous figures are often the ones who seem the safest. Mike Lombardo was once known as a rising star in the online music scene. A self-taught pianist and singer-songwriter, he built a niche following on YouTube with quirky, heartfelt songs that captured the struggles of young adulthood. His talent for melody and his ability to connect with fans made him one of the early internet success stories, an artist proving you didn't need a record label to be heard. But beneath the image of the eccentric musician was a double life that would end in scandal, ruin, and prison. Born in 1988 in New York, Lombardo developed a love of music from childhood. By the time he was in college, he was performing his original songs on small stages and uploading his work to the internet. His style, part alternative pop, part nerd-inspired storytelling, found a loyal fan base among early YouTube communities. He wasn't flashy, but he was authentic, and his songs felt personal. Audiences connected with him as a friend more than a distant performer. By 2009, his YouTube channel had thousands of subscribers, and he was playing at conventions, collaborating with other creators, and releasing independent albums. His music carried a kind of vulnerable honesty that resonated with people trying to navigate love, identity, and creativity in the digital age. Fans admired him not just for his songs, but for his accessibility. He responded to messages, engaged in live chats, and made his supporters feel like part of his journey. But that accessibility came with dangers. ones that Lombardo himself exploited. In 2012, disturbing allegations surfaced that he had been soliciting sexually explicit images from underage fans. The reports spread quickly across online communities. At first, many fans resisted the idea. Mike Lombardo, the gentle, nerdy songwriter. It didn't seem possible. But the truth was far worse than rumors. Federal authorities investigated and discovered that Lombardo had engaged in explicit conversations with multiple minors, asking them to send nude photographs and videos. Prosecutors allege that he deliberately sought out underage girls, using his status as a popular internet musician to manipulate them into compliance. The very intimacy that had fueled his career, the sense of closeness between creator and fan, became his weapon of exploitation. When the case broke publicly, shock rippled across the online music scene. Fans who had looked up to him as a role model suddenly felt betrayed. Other creators distanced themselves from him immediately. The quirky musician they once admired had been exposed as a predator. In 2013, Lombardo pleaded guilty to receiving child pornography. During court proceedings, prosecutors revealed how he had solicited explicit material from at least 5 minors, some as young as 15. They emphasized how he abused his influence, preying on the trust of vulnerable fans who believed they were safe with him. The evidence was damning: chat logs, images, and testimony that left no doubt about his guilt. The judge sentenced him to 5 years in federal prison, followed by 10 years of supervised release. For many observers, the sentence seemed light compared to the emotional and psychological harm inflicted on his victims. The courtroom became a stage not for his music, but for the devastating consequences of his actions. The impact on his fan base was profound. Supporters who had once sung his lyrics felt ashamed for ever believing in him. Some deleted his music from their playlists, while others struggled with the conflict of still loving the art but hating the artist. Survivors of his manipulation spoke of the deep emotional scars left behind, feelings of guilt, betrayal, and confusion that would take years to heal. Lombardo's downfall also reverberated across the broader YouTube community. At the time, he wasn't just a musician. He was part of the first generation of creators proving you could build a career online. His arrest forced fans and platforms alike to confront uncomfortable questions. How do you protect young audiences in a space where creators are just a message away? What responsibility do platforms have to monitor the relationships between influencers and their followers? Even years after his conviction, Lombardo's name remains a cautionary tale. His once promising music career is destroyed, his reputation permanently tainted. The man who wrote songs about vulnerability and human connection is remembered instead for preying on the very people who trusted him most. His story became a reminder that not every creator who seems relatable has good intentions, and that the openness of online communities can leave young fans dangerously exposed. In the aftermath, advocates for online safety used Lombardo's case as evidence of the urgent need for education. They argued that teenagers must be taught to recognize grooming behavior, and that parents must remain vigilant about who their children follow online. Lombardo's actions underscored how easily fame, even on a small scale, can be weaponized in the hands of someone with predatory instincts. For Lombardo himself, prison stripped away the persona of the quirky musician. No longer the man behind a piano, he was just another inmate, serving time for crimes that destroyed lives and betrayed trust. His songs, once filled with humor and heart, now exist as relics of a career that will never recover. The haunting reflection of Mike Lombardo's case is simple but devastating. Sometimes the most dangerous figures are not the ones who shout the loudest, but the ones who whisper, who appear safe, who make you believe they see you as special. His fans thought they were part of his story. In reality, they were his victims. The chilling takeaway is this: fame, no matter how small, creates power, and when power is abused, the damage lasts far beyond the headlines. Lombardo's legacy is not his music, but the shattered trust of those who believed in him. Jake Paul was once seen as the face of a new kind of celebrity. A teenager who rose to fame on Vine and then YouTube, he embodied the energy of internet culture, loud, brash, and unapologetic. Millions of young fans followed his every move, while parents and critics rolled their eyes at his antics. But behind the chaos of his brand, there was a darker truth. Jake Paul's relentless pursuit of fame and fortune would eventually cross lines that led not just to lawsuits and scandal, but to the FBI showing up at his mansion. His journey is not just the story of an influencer gone too far. It's the story of how internet fame can spiral into criminal investigation. Born in 1997 in Cleveland, Ohio, Jake grew up alongside his older brother Logan. Together, they carved out careers on Vine with comedic skits and wild stunts. By the time Vine shut down, Jake had already transitioned to YouTube, where his channel exploded. He leaned into a persona of chaos and rebellion, posting pranks, parties, and dangerous stunts that made him a hero to some and a menace to others. In 2017, Jake starred on Disney Channel's Bizaardvark, a family-friendly show that gave him mainstream recognition. But the partnership quickly soured. His off-screen behavior, including wild house parties, neighborhood disturbances, and dangerous stunts, drew so much controversy that Disney cut ties with him. For many, this would have been the end. For Jake, it was only the beginning. He launched Team 10, a social media collective of young influencers who lived with him in a mansion and churned out content together. The brand was marketed as a training ground for the next generation of internet stars. But behind the scenes, Team 10 was plagued with accusations of exploitation, manipulation, and toxic work environments. Former members later described it as less a creative collective and more a pressure cooker, where young creators were pushed into chaos for views. The controversies mounted: noise complaints from neighbors, public disturbances, reckless stunts in residential areas. Jake reveled in the attention, claiming he was simply living life on his own terms. But by 2020, the chaos reached a tipping point. That summer, during the George Floyd protests in Arizona, Jake Paul was spotted at a shopping mall as it was being looted. Video footage showed him inside, surrounded by chaos. Though he denied participating in the looting, the images sparked outrage. He was charged with criminal trespass and unlawful assembly, though the charges were later dropped. The damage, however, was done. For the first time, Jake's actions were not just controversial, they were potentially criminal. Then came the raid. In August 2020, FBI agents descended on Jake Paul's Calabasas mansion. Helicopters circled overhead as heavily armed officers seized multiple firearms from the property. The raid was linked to an ongoing federal investigation into illegal activity surrounding Jake and his associates. Though details were initially scarce, it was later revealed that the investigation stemmed partly from his presence at the Arizona Mall and allegations of financial and business misconduct. The images of federal agents at Jake Paul's mansion marked a dramatic shift in his career. He was no longer just the YouTube troublemaker, he was under federal scrutiny. The raid fueled speculation about everything from fraud to weapons charges, though Jake himself was never indicted. Still, the optics were damning. The boy who once pranked his neighbors had grown into a man investigated by the FBI. As his YouTube empire fractured under controversy, Jake pivoted again, this time into professional boxing. He framed himself as a disruptor of the sport, leveraging his notoriety to draw massive pay-per-view numbers. Critics dismissed him as a sideshow, but his fights against former athletes and UFC fighters made headlines worldwide. Time and again, Jake seemed to blur the line between recklessness and crime, between ambition and exploitation. Each controversy added to the portrait of a man who thrived on chaos, but whose chaos had very real consequences. The aftermath of Jake Paul's controversies remains unsettled. He has not faced prison time like others in this series, but the FBI raid on his mansion stands as one of the starkest examples of how far an influencer's life can spiral. His reputation is split. To some, he's a hustler who beat the system, turning scandal into profit. To others, he's a symbol of what happens when fame grows faster than responsibility. What makes Jake Paul's story particularly haunting is the reflection it forces. He began as a teenager making silly videos for fun. Along the way, he built an empire, alienated communities, drew federal attention, and courted scandal after scandal. His fame insulated him from some consequences, but it also magnified his mistakes. Unlike smaller creators who fell quietly, Jake Paul's downfall played out under the brightest spotlight possible. The chilling takeaway is this: Jake Paul's rise and near fall demonstrates the fragility of internet fame. The same platform that creates idols can expose their darkest flaws in an instant. His FBI raid wasn't just a moment of legal peril. It was a warning that even the biggest influencers are not untouchable. And for young fans who once idolized him, the lingering question is whether their hero was ever truly in control, or whether chaos was always the plan. For more real-life crime stories, subscribe and stay tuned for the next deep dive.